r/AskReddit. What were you taught in school that you later learned was completely untrue? My 7th grade health teacher, black people can't swim. Their bones are much denser than ours. I've seen black kids jump into the pool. They just sink like rocks. Imagine my surprise upon moving away from Union. Jesus. When was this? If you don't mind me asking. Before summer break. In 7th grade health class we were learning about cancer. My teacher explained to the class that cancer can only be located on/in major organs. A few seconds after he said that, I raised my hand and said my grandpa had surgery to get cancer in his knee removed. A knee isn't a major organ, is it? And this teacher thought for a minute and realized he was completely wrong and just responded with saying, I'm not sure. Let's move on. Oh crap. The knee is a major organ. We are screwed. I mean, yeah. You can't adventure with an arrow stuck through it. Therefore it is obviously important. Cracking your knuckles will give you arthritis. I was doing it regardless of that myth. It's not like I didn't believe it. But sometimes you just have to crack your damn knuckles because your hand has a cramp. Or something. Very relieved to find out it was a myth. I crack them because it makes a cool sound. While silly Americans spent millions building a zero-gravity pen that could write in space, the Russians used pencils. Actually, NASA programs previously used pencils, but because of the substantial dangers that broken pencil tips and graphite dust pose to electronics in zero gravity, the flammable nature of wood present in pencils, and the inadequate quality documentation produced by non-permanent or smeared record keeping, a better solution was needed. Russian cosmonauts used pencils and greased pencils on plastic slates until also adopting a space pen in 1969 with a purchase of 100 units for use on all future missions. NASA never approached Paul Fisher, the inventor, to develop a pen. Nor did Fisher receive any government funding for the pen's development. Fisher invented it independently and then, in 1965, asked NASA to try it. After extensive testing, NASA decided to use the pens in future Apollo missions. Your school taught about the history of writing implements in space missions? It was one of those anecdotes that my teachers used to tell us during class when they had too much time on their hands. Cursive would be useful for anything other than signing my name. It still makes me feel more adult sometimes to write in cursive. Then I review my work and realize I don't have spectacular cursive writing. I have asked my kids' teachers why it is still being taught. My thinking is the time would be better spent on computers. The best answer I have received is that cursive writing opens up creative parts of the brain. Or some such answer. The 5 senses are a total myth. There's also a sense of balance, time, hunger, and creeping dread you feel viscerally upon opening the Book of the Dead. Necronomicon. Last I've heard, there's over 20 of them. Your school had the Necronomicon? Lucky. All my school had was 3 copies of the Two Towers and not a single copy of Return of the King. That everyone believed the world was flat up until Columbus proved them wrong. Additionally, that Columbus went to his grave not knowing that he hadn't landed in the West Indies. If I recall correctly, there is a diary entry written by him acknowledging that what he had landed in was a new continent. Additionally, Vikings discovered the Americas before Columbus. You only use 10% of your brain. Ducking. Liars. Traffic lights only use 33% of their lights. Damn. That's a good rough analogy. The food pyramid. Eat your carbs. Kids. You mean that one that says bread is better than vegetables? Spits out bread. Wait, is it not? That the ancient Romans has places called vomitoriums, where they would go and gorge themselves on food and then vomit to make room for more. Gross. Right? Kind of like that one scene in Catching Fire. Vomitoriums were actually a sort of hallway designed for spectators to exit the Colosseum and other arenas as efficiently as possible. Fun fact. Vomit, and thus vomitorium, basically means to spew forth. When you puke, you spew forth old food. A vomitorium would be something that spew forth people into a stadium. I never knew that. They did show us pictures of big rooms with a lot of holes around the walls, turns out those were public toilets. I simply assumed the vomit room looked slightly different. But they printed the wrong picture. Also, so many erroneous pictures in school books. So many. That there wasn't any air combat during WW1. Because the planes were only used for scouting. What about Red Baron? Didn't a lot of planes back then essentially try to kill each other with hand-held pistols fired from the cockpit? In the very earliest days. Yes. It got a lot more sophisticated pretty fast. Especially with the development of synchronization devices that allowed machine guns to fire through propellers. Our gym teacher told us your body temperature increases by 40 degrees when you run. When we pointed out you go to the hospital a fever over 103. She told us it was different. And to stop acting smug. That's why she teaches gym. Do gym teachers not have degrees in the US? That Christopher Columbus was a hero and got along great with the Native Americans. According to the book my first grade teacher read us. Christopher Columbus did not realize the flag he placed, and the illustration was a full-on American flag like the ones that exist today, was not on India. It was a mistake. But it was the greatest mistake in history. And later my 11th grade history teacher history is filled with a lot of misconceptions and misinformation. Like all that stuff with Columbus being the first person ever to discover America, and that he was a great man. Yeah, we know that's all a load of crap. I had a middle school teacher who told us that Buddhists have to pray to Buddha 3 times a day. Took me till high school before I realized he was probably thinking about Muslims. Edit. Yes. I know Jews pray 3 times and Muslims pray 5 times a day. The point being, the dude was pretty thoroughly wrong. Muslims pray to Mecca 5 times a day. So he even got that part wrong. Mecca is a location Muslims pray facing it, but they don't pray to it. They pray to Allah. In kindergarten, the teacher's aide told us that north is always forwards, no matter which direction you are facing. During recess, I figured out which way north really was and told her. Her response was, only if you are facing that way. Edit. Her first language is English. I think she thought that we were unable to understand north/south/east/west, and she got really mad at me when I proved her wrong. Until she was eventually fired a few years later. She tried to punish me with anything possible. For example, when I talked during lunch, she moved me to a different table. North. She smiled and sagely stated. Pointed forth and indicated. All the forward land expanding lies whichever way you're standing. See, she said. Convinced completely. When I turn, she whispered. Sweetly. While I waited. Watched and doubted. North rotates with me. She shouted. Now it's here. She sighed. Excited. Now it's here. She cried. Delighted. Now it's here. She spoke. Elated. No it's not. I said. Frustrated. And to me ducking died. Wikipedia is a terrible resource that is often inaccurate because literally anyone can instantly change literally any article. Wikipedia checks every edit within 24 hours. Ike. And they definitely screen new users somehow. I tried editing a small backwater page once for hits and giggles and my edit never happened. More importantly, Wikipedia has stood up to every instance of cross-referencing that I've done. And I've written a decent number of research papers. Edit, changed formatting and a few words for clarity. Whenever I was told I couldn't use Wikipedia as a resource, I'd do it anyway, but would click the links that Wikipedia cited. Make sure the info was there in a way that I could reasonably comprehend. And would cite that instead. I'm a master's student, and I do that too. Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity by flying a kite with a key on it. No. He didn't discover it. He invented it. The phenomenon of electrons moving around never happened until he flew that kite. Just like fire never existed before the cavemen. Right? Went to private Christian school. The one I always got was, when you're out there in college and the real world, you need to be firm in your faith. People will challenge you left and right. Professors might try to debate you and break you down and other people will be bombarding your faith everywhere you go. Thanks for the scare tactics. But the most conflict I've had was with a classmate, and it went, oh you're Christian. I was raised Catholic, but I'm atheist now. What did you get for number 7? Edit. Wow, this blew up. Instructor at a state school here, if anything. Most of us are terrified to even touch on the topic of religion in class for fear of bringing up a debate where nobody is going to budge. If we come out as religious, we are prejudiced. If we don't, we are queer, liberal, atheist, hippie feminists who would love nothing better than to rip your faith to shreds in front of you. It's a lose-lose, man. I just pretend like it doesn't exist. And I teach in the humanities. You're telling me teachers don't like to bring up complicated discussions that inevitably lead to everybody getting really angry. Tons of drama and waste a lot of time. Weird. It's illegal to sell yours at yard sales. The duck kind of school did you go to? Beyblade Academy. Everything about chemistry. In grade 9 we were introduced to chemistry. Then in the later grades they were like everything you were taught was essentially wrong. We did it to simplify things. Here's how it actually is. Then in university they go lol, everything you were taught in high school was wrong. It's actually like this. Looking back, I wasn't bad at chemistry. I always did well. But because of this constant flip-flopping I'm still confused about some of the basics. For example, acids. Edit. Yes, the last sentence was an unintentional pun. I meant I was confused about basic concepts like acids, etc. I remember I was taking up chemical and my sister was in college studying biochem, and I heard her say to her friend, "Gem chemical is a lie." After that, I started searching for clues. I finally got it when, after the unit on ideal gases, I asked why they are called ideal gases, and realized everything we just learned basically didn't apply to real life, but only a very small percent of things. Or, they would always say, there's exceptions to this rule, and then it turned out mostly everything was an exception to the rule. I was so irritated. Can you give more specific examples? You can't take a bigger number away from a smaller number. OMG yes. I just remembered when we learned about negative numbers. I was so goddamn pissed off and upset. Nowadays, I tutor young kids. And when this question comes up, and I will take the time to try and explain it in a very simple way that won't cloud or confuse them. One time though, a kid got excited about what he learned and showed it to a friend. And came back to me next week and said his teacher said I was wrong and that it's impossible to subtract big number from a small one. Come on. I can understand a teacher not wanting to confuse kids with negative numbers when they are just learning subtraction. But to straight up lie and say that it's impossible to do it is abhorrent. What's wrong with saying yes? You can do that and you'll learn that another time, but right now we are only going to subtract small numbers from bigger numbers? And if a kid actually learns how to do it, the teacher should encourage them. Thanks for being awesome and teaching the kids the right thing. History. I'm from the Eastern Europe, formerly from Soviet Union. When my parents studied history, they learned that the Western Alliance were the bad guys throughout the history. When I went to school, independent Estonia now, I learned that the Soviets were bad guys. I've learned enough to know that both sides did horrible things and we shouldn't just blame one or another. Edit. Wow. This blew up. Going to answer some replies now. War never changes. Solid Snake disagrees. Men and women have a different number of ribs. Also some stuff about the Antichrist. But I didn't believe that. Till men and women have the same number of ribs. I'm more interested in the Antichrist part. Ducking like and subscribe.